morning. A pleasant good morning to everybody. You're watching me live from Barbados. This is the Marcia Week Show, and today we have a great show lined up for you. And we're going to ask you to share and let somebody know that we're on, because today we have a lot that we are talking about, and we're still talking about abuse in the church. We This show is actually entitled "Stop the Clergy Predators." And somebody seeing it might thinking, oh, that is so strong. But really and truly, when you begin to examine what is happening within our churches throughout the region, throughout Africa, throughout the world, we're seeing that there's just a lot of abuse that is happening throughout a lot of our churches. Now, let me just hasten to say that, yes, there are some wonderful preachers. I know you're watching and you say, well, my pastor is not like that, and my pastor is not doing anything like that. I am very aware of that. I had a wonderful pastor, Pastor McLean. Clive McBean. And he was a young man, and he was my pastor in Jamaica. And as a teenager, I had to bring my report card to him. And even when I went on to college, he would make sure that he takes money from the offerings, and he asked his secretary to make sure that I had money to go to school. And there was nothing strange about that. I mean, everything was done in the open, and it was a good, safe relationship, because he was taking care of the young people in the community. So we do have wonderful leaders. But often we have some leaders who would be doing stuff like that and then basically grooming that congregant for future use. Okay. And a lot of times that's where it occurs. All right, I see that people are on. Can you tell me exactly where you're watching from? Can you tell me where you're watching from? There are people on. Can you tell me where you're watching from? Yes, good morning, good morning, good morning. And let me know where you're watching from. Please share the live. Please share the live. Very important topic this morning, a topic that we don't necessarily want to talk about, because, we have this view that we must not touch the Lord's anointed, right? And so we don't want to talk about certain things. But I think that, there might be some victims that are watching. There might be some clergymen watching, or clergy women watching, who are in strange situations, and are in I'm still not seeing where you guys are from, but but who are in going through various kinds of issues within your local church. Hi, Steve. And Steve, please share, please share, please share. Didn't have a chance to promote this week at all, so I'm going to need you to help me to share. And so, if you're watching, you might be an abuser, you might be a victim. We want to be able to provide answers, and provide a place where you can find answers, find solutions, and you can find people that you can talk to. And so this is hi, Linda, how you doing? Hi, Linda from Barbados. Linda has been following this, and this is, I agree with you, Linda, as you said last week, an important show. And I'm really hoping that we begin to take the covers off what's happening in the churches. Linda, can you share for me? There are so many people who are suffering within the churches, abuse on every single level. Now, I don't know how many of have heard about Cora Jakes. How many of you heard about Bishop T.D. Jakes' daughter, and the son-in-law, actually? How many of you have heard about TD Jakes? And hi, Monica, Linda. Hi, Monica, Linda. Guys, have you heard about TD Jakes' daughter, Cora Jakes? Anybody? Anybody's heard about that? Now, here is a picture of Bishop TD Jakes here on my screen, and Bishop Jakes' eldest daughter, Cora Jakes, seems like a wonderful person, but her husband has been accused of sexually abusing their daughter, their adopted daughter, and he's now in prison, and in jail. And we make sure for this family. I shared it with my husband earlier in the week, and we said a prayer for the family. Going through something like this cannot be easy, right? It cannot be easy, and so it is important that we offer our prayers. But the thing is, this guy was Richard Coleman, because she's married. Cora Jakes is now married. She's now Cora Jakes Coleman. And Richard Coleman, he was a leader in the church. He was a leader in Bishop T.D. Jakes' church as well. But he had been repeatedly sexually abusing his adopted daughter. And over a period of time, she is, as far as I remember, she is about 12. I don't think she's even fully 12 years old as yet. And this is what has happened to her. And they have had to, they've had to report it to the authorities. Now the question is, this is what was done with TD Jakes, his son-in-law, as a leader in the church. The question, though, is what really happens in the churches when a leader, someone who is part of the clergy, or even part of leadership in the church, molests someone, a person in church. What happens? That's it. A lot of we are very, very quick to use the scripture that I use at the beginning of the program about touching not the Lord's anointed, and that we love to say, let's pray for them. But in this case, they didn't just say let's pray for them. They filed charges against this son-in-law. This is what happened. Something that what I'm saying, guys. But we realize that in a lot of our churches, when there is any issue like this, it is covered up. We remember, some of you would remember what happened. Yes, Linda is saying, oh no, that's horrible. Yes, abuse happens at every level of society. You're correct. Abuse happens at every level of society, even in the church, unfortunately. The problem, Linda, is that when it happens in the church, we love to take something and like a big blanket and we cover it. And one of the blankets that we use to cover it is we're going to pray for the person. We're praying for the person. But guys, we can pray for the person and still uncover the thing, and still not be silent about it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it is important that we do this. Now we know that in Barbados here, there was the I don't know of any other cases that went to the courts. And that's strange, Linda, and those who are watching. Steve, Linda, Monica, Nehemiah, good morning. Andrea Critchlow, good morning. It is a bit strange that we only have this one one case here that went to the courts. And we all know what this is about. This is about Jippy Doyle. Okay, so Jippy Doyle, who passed last year, he was convicted of raping a teen girl. Who remembers that? Yeah, that was right here in Barbados. And he received 10 years. But then he did I think 3 years, and the little girl was 13 years old, right? A 13-year-old girl was considered to be was would have been raped. I mean, later on they dropped the charges to molestation, that it wasn't rape, it was molestation. But at 13 years old, I don't know how they got that done. But you're going to tell me that there aren't more leaders, more persons in the clergy who needed to go to also be convicted of these kind of crimes? Yeah. Is it just are we saying that it's just Jippy Doyle that would have been the person that is the only pastor? The reason that I know it can't be just Jippy Doyle, because I've just been here over 20 years, and the number of young girls that have come to me and said to me, Marcia, the pastor of this particular church, or this leader has done something. When you try to get the parents involved, the real truth is that when you try to get the parents involved and you try to get them to decide to go to the courts, then nobody wants to do anything. But the reality is that this is something that happens. As someone says, it is everywhere. And as I said, that was the only case that we know that was prosecuted. Anybody know of another case that was prosecuted here in Barbados? Does anybody else knows? I don't know of any other. I've tried to look at it. I am gonna be very open and frank on here. There have been allegations, several. I mean, lots of allegations. Some very large churches in Barbados, very large churches, and a lot of times what they do, they just move around the pastors, move around the leaders. Yeah. Hi, Jackie. Jacqueline, Aline. Good morning. They move around the pastor. So you did something wrong in this church, and they move you to the next church. Right now, this morning we have with us LYNN Morgan, and she is going to be talking to us about her experience, that things that she saw in her church here in Barbados. And she has written a book. She has written a book on it, and I'm not seeing her now. She was in. I'm not seeing her now. That's in, and so I'm going to see what is the challenges. Yeah. Yeah. So we want to. Oh, okay. LYNN is right here. LYNN is right here. And I want you guys to share, because the reason I wanted to share is that we don't know who might be listening that might be going through this type of abuse. And it is very, very important that we understand that silence is not being spiritual. Silence is having those abuse suffering. Okay, they end up suffering. All right. So we have with us here Miss LYNN, Ambassador LYNN Morgan. Welcome.
Thank you, Marcia. How are you today?
I am so good, so good, and it's great to see you. I want to just thank you for coming on, Ambassador Lynn Morgan. She's Barbadian living overseas, and Lynn is an author. And written an amazing book that we're going to talk about today. But she's on today, and she's going to be talking to us about what she would have experienced in churches in Barbados, that she was a part of. I think in one in particular. And I want the viewers to know that we are on 246 Bajan Vibes. 246 Bajan Vibes, and that is the internet radio station. And I'm telling you, it's I don't know, Lynn, if you've heard of that station, but it's uncovering so much in Barbados.
Okay.
Yes, very, 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 very powerful, and it's a pleasure and an honor to also be on that radio station. So 246 Bajan Vibes. Hi, Monica. Monica, good to see you. Monica is saying just before you start, because of our viewers, they're part of the conversation. Monica is saying, I used to sing in a church choir, and they brought a priest that wanted to do the same with the ladies, and I stopped from going after he came telling me nonsense. I haven't seen him back since. He has since died. Yes, Monica, it is rampant. So we look at Jippy Doyle and we said, well, he got convicted, but what about the others that were not reported? Okay, so Miss Morgan, can you tell us, what age did you become a Christian?
Well, I've been a Christian since I was age 16.
Hmm.
So I've been a Christian for a long time.
A long time.
Yeah,
And so you have been, you've been part of churches, right?
definitely.
Mm-hmm. And what has your experience been? I know we started to talk in the week about, and some of the things that you've seen, which actually prompted you to write a book about this, which we're going to talk about this book a little later. Hi, Michelle. Good morning. Lynn, can you tell us about your experience and
Yeah,
what caused
sure.
you to write the book?
Well, I have called the book in, I have called the name of the church in the book MHI Assembly. This assembly actually no longer exists, thank God.
So
But
MHI
MHI,
stood for
right.
what?
That's what I call it in the book because obviously I'm writing a few years later and I'm dealing with some very sensitive stuff. So I wanted to be careful. I didn't use anybody's names. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't used anybody's any situations that would have been too personal, that would have been, clearly point out exactly who this was that was going through this experience. So I'm
Yes.
going to try to be careful as well today because our society is a small one,
Mm-hmm.
and so situations they can have greater ramifications, let me just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will
Yes.
be as clear as I can be because what we experienced at that time in that assembly, I know for sure has been occurring for a long time. And since
Mm-hmm.
our experience, that experience has also, I would say, I look at it like technology, and I would say that it has advanced. So even things that we experienced then, persons are experiencing now, but to a greater degree. And then, of course, there's social media. So, like with your experience in St. Vincent that you highlighted, you were
Mm-hmm.
able to bring, social media videos or things that had been posted, things that people would have said because it was done in a different time. What
Mm-hmm.
happened? This took place between 2000 and 2008 here in Barbados. I would have been
Wow.
part of MHI Assembly.
So it's a
And
bit, so this is 2000 and 2008. So this is not in the 70s.
no,
This is now, and this is what I want people, because people are, yes, they're saying, oh, Jippy Doyle went to jail for it, but what about the other predators, these
exactly,
clergy
exactly.
predators that are still there? Because you're saying this is 2008 to 2000 to 2008.
Yes, and
This
and interestingly enough, you brought up Jippy Doyle, and this person, this quote unquote apostle would have been friends with J.P. Doyle. And I remember at the time we were forbidden to talk about J.P. Doyle and what he had done. So this is how they were linking together and maintaining
Ah,
control. We were not supposed to talk about J.P. Doyle's sin, and we were not. You don't want to cast stones. It was a topic that you were not supposed to touch, basically.
mm-hmm.
But
Mm.
the
So
thing that
that's how
happened,
they're trying to keep it would appear that they're trying trying to keep a fraternity.
yes, they're trying to keep it quiet. They this is something that continues to be covered. And the reason I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
speak out, and the reason I wrote the book, is that we're not just this is not a newspaper article. These are people's lives that have been impacted for eternity, because
Mm-hmm.
our congregation was largely consisted of young people. So you have
Yes.
young persons within, their 20s, maybe their early teens, and they're under 30. Most of the persons were under 30, and they were looking to now establish their lives. So you have persons who did not have a foundation like I did. So my
Mm-hmm.
experience is not their experience, because
Mm-hmm.
my foundation was in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And I clearly understood that I didn't serve man.
Mm-hmm.
However, that does not mean that it did not impact me. I'm just
Right.
saying that the impact would have been greater for other
Mm-hmm.
persons, because many persons were now coming to Christ. They were now coming to
Mm-hmm.
learn about Him. They were now trying to develop a relationship. And you are in an assembly where, honestly, the basic tenets of the faith were not being taught. So what was being focused on was issues like demonology and deliverance, and persons who had a lot of emotional issues, and they're in need of help and that kind of thing. So that would have been the main
Mm-hmm.
focus, even though I would have been pushing for these people need to know Christ, because based on our experience, I couldn't understand how people came to Christ and didn't have any excitement. I don't know about you, Marcy, but when they came to Christ, I was excited. It was
So,
something
so
new.
So you're saying, Lynn, I will ask you to pause at different points because
Sure.
I really want to use this show as a teaching tool.
Yes.
And yeah. So you mentioned something very, very important, and I saw how it connected to the case in Saint Vincent, where
Yes.
that church in Saint Vincent was really all about, and it still is there, about demonology and deliverance, and people are emotional help. So it is that
Yes.
through that they bring in the people, and
Yes.
it's a grooming. They come
Yes.
in and you're giving them things, you're ministering to them, and then they're able to pounce on them, because we need to be able to break it down so that somebody who's listening, and guys, I'm not
Yes.
doing this to destroy the church. I am doing this so that people can be helped.
Yes. Of course. Of
Yes,
course. And
continue, please, and let's hear let's hear the details. Don't call any names, or hear the details so that we can help somebody. So
okay,
continue,
sure.
please.
So as you said, that was definitely a similarity. So this is actually one of the reasons why I reached out to you, because listening to that experience, I can tell you, I can identify with every single thing that the doctor would have been sharing. I could
Mm-hmm.
identify with everything. It was almost like a replay, an exact replay. So I'm saying there were many young persons who would have come in to the assembly at some different points in time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the experiences would have been that persons who were in need of deliverance, they might have come into, say, a church service, and they received this word: oh, you have a problem with lust. That was a popular one. The popular problem would have been lust. So you have an issue with lust, and you need to meet with me outside of this quote unquote deliverance session that you are having here today, or this ministry session that you are having here today. So there were persons who would have then met with the leader, and a lot of things then took place under the guise of deliverance. So one of the persons that we met, and this only came out after everything came out, was a young lady who said she went into this deliverance session. It was done in the church office. And she said she sat on the chair and this presence pinned her to the chair. So the person left the room and the presence pinned her to the chair. And then the leader came back in and said to her, just do whatever you feel led to do. And so she felt that this was the spirit taking over her. And she then proceeded to give this person oral sex. That's what she thought the spirit was leading her to do. Okay. And, after the session, she was really confused.
So which spirit was he referring to? The Holy Spirit, or he was referring to the
The spirit
demon?
that was in her. Remember, she has a spirit of lust.
Ah, so she had a spirit of lust, he said, and so he needed to have personal deliverance with her.
Yes.
And then he said, whatever the spirit. So while she was in there, he left the room, and then she fell pinned down.
Yes,
and then
she did.
he tells her, whatever the spirit of lust tells you to do it.
Yes.
And then she started to give him oral sex.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Right. And that was her first session. Now, this is not someone at the time who she was invited by a friend, someone who has been a member of the church. So she only told the story after. This wasn't something that we would have been aware of before.
Mm-hmm.
And then she left after that session. I mean, most persons are wondering, well, why would she have gone back after, having that experience? And she went back another time and the same thing happened. So he left the room and this presence pinned her to the chair so she couldn't move. And this time, the experience was way different. So the spirit of lust took over and she had anal sex.
So
This
hold
caused
a minute. Somebody's saying Raquel Jills. Hi, Raquel. Raquel said, okay, I don't understand that. And I think what it is, we should pause here because so people understand. What I suspect is what happened to her was that there was he was operating in a demonic realm.
Exactly.
Okay. So yes, Raquel. So this is what's happened. This clergyman, this predator, wasn't just operating in a physical realm. All right. He was also Lynn, would you agree with me, operating in a spiritual realm?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
right. So this the when whatever demonic realm that's operating with him. Yes, Linda is saying like witchcraft, and this
Yes.
is why, guys, share the live, because there's so many people within the churches right here in Barbados, and they can come for me. It's okay. We're gonna talk about it right here in Barbados because this is a case right here in Barbados, and so this man supposed to be up. He was operating also in the demonic, and she felt pinned down. Okay.
Yes.
And therefore underneath an influence, and that happens to people when they're sometimes in deliverance, right, Lynn? Isn't that what happens sometimes?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Continue.
So I think too at the time, Marcia, I should make it clear that, the whole idea of deliverance was kind of new in the 2000s. It was kind of new. So you found within our island at the time, a lot of churches were now kind of popping up. There was this apostolic movement, apostolic prophetic movement, and there were a lot of new assemblies popping up. So let me make it clear that this assembly initially was associated with the Pentecostal assembly with Pawi.
So
They were initially they were
okay,
not a member. We were just associated
with Pawi, because
with
some of these
Pawi.
Pawi, and that's the thing, the Pawi in Barbados, some of those ministers themselves, because I have a list here. I'm telling you, they could come for me after this, but the facts are there. And these are allegations. Let me say that before because I'm going to make sure I say they're allegations. There have been allegations about Abundant Life Assembly leaders there. And we all whisper in our houses in the church world, and we know it. Okay? These are some of these Pawi churches. People's Cathedral. There was a big one, big scandal just
Yeah.
about 3 years ago, Lynn, and we just pretend. We
Yeah.
pretend as though it doesn't happen. So I'm not surprised that you said it was they were connected.
So
And
no, I also brought that up because I want to highlight something. So
mm-hmm,
because this leader was different. So they were associated. But when issues started to come to the fore, this leader did not want to be accountable.
correct.
So
Mm-hmm.
what they did is they withdrew the church from from being associated with Powie and became independent.
Yes. And
So the
Pawi is a
problem is
Pentecostal
accountability.
Assembly of the West Indies. Somebody listening who doesn't is not, because we in the church world, so we understand what Pawi is.
Yes.
Pentecostal Assembly of the West Indies. And so
Yes.
and we must say that the scandal that happened a couple years ago, just about 2 3 years ago, was dealt with by the leadership of Pawi. So
Yes.
let's make
Yes.
that clear. No charges were filed, were anything, but I mean, was dealt with in the sense that the pastor was put at another church. So let's
Right.
continue.
So
Yeah.
that one was dealt with, but our situation, we became an independent assembly because this leader did not want to be accountable, right? So first and foremost, they didn't want to be a member of Powie. They just wanted to be associated. Then they withdrew from Powie and became independent because what was happening is that there was issues were beginning to be exposed and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to have to be accountable to someone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
So you have to be careful. So a lot of these independent churches, they say that they're quote unquote associated with persons maybe overseas or whatever, but really and truly they want not to be accountable. So when we
Mm-hmm.
say that, sometimes the church has not dealt with things, we also have to be clear that sometimes persons don't want to be dealt with. So they
Mm-hmm.
set up their institutions in a way that they don't have to be accountable. No, we're not saying that it's right,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want to be accountable to another assembly or church or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So they
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
an independent assembly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what
Mm-hmm.
happened in our situation. Now, I was a leader in this assembly, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we first became aware of anything happening at all, we came together as leaders and we sought to restore the pastor, let him go on a sabbatical, let him get counseling, those kind of things.
Okay, so as a leader in the church,
Yes.
when you realize that your attention was turned to that's interesting though, Lynn, that because I see it happen all the time. I've been in the church since I was 10.
Yeah.
Okay. So I see this kind of thing happen, and we rally around the clergy, the predator, and we make
Yes.
sure that we try to get the predator help, but then
Yes.
we don't take care of the victims.
Exactly. Exactly. So then that is where wisdom was lacking because a lot of us as leaders were younger. So we were doing what we would have seen happen. You restore this person. Now we understand that these leaders are human and they will fall in some way. So you try to do the biblical thing and help to restore them.
Mm-hmm.
Let them go on leave, let them get counseling. And I believe if a person is repentant, there's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
In our situation, our leader was not repentant. He was not truly repentant. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to change.
How do you know that?
I know this because we put steps in place. We even sent to Trinidad and we brought in, I can't remember the name of the guy now, but a very established pastor. He was established in deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he came in because I know we were an independent assembly, and he came in and he was trying to help with the restoration of this person, but
Mm-hmm.
he recognized that this person didn't want to be restored. I remember he
Mm.
he preached this he preached a message about um when about whoredom. I cannot the spirit of whoredom. He did speak about that.
Mm-hmm.
And anyhow, the person was supposed to get a lead counseling with
Mm-hmm.
him, but what he was doing in the background. So let's talk about manipulation and control now. because this
Mm-hmm.
is what was happening. So this is how I know for sure that this person didn't want to be restored. So they manipulated the situation so that they didn't have to go for counseling with this person and that they didn't have to step down for too long. They eventually started to bad talk this leader, and some situation happened and they parted ways. So no longer is it possible for them to be counseled by this person. They even
Uh-huh.
went as far as to say that they met up for counseling online. They wanted to do online counseling as opposed to dealing with this leader, this real leader, real time.
Mm-hmm.
They want to go to do online counseling, and then that they didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to continue either, because the whole idea was to get off of your time off as quickly as possible to get back into the pews, get back into the pulpit, sorry, so that you can continue to do what you're doing,
Ah, you
right?
see, a lot of people listening, they don't understand the what is happening to a lot in a lot of our churches in
Yes,
Barbados. And
yes,
not just Barbados, we dealt with St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we are gearing up to deal with some issues in Trinidad and Jamaica. Just keep watching this space because we're going to keep hammering at it, okay? And there are lots of people watching, they don't fully understand. So when you talk about independent churches,
right.
they don't people don't understand that, and the fact that they move away, like this particular one came away from Pawi. Not that Pawi
Yes.
is any different, as we said, because from where I sit, I run a dance school, and I
Hmm.
hear it from the young girls.
Right.
I hear it from the young girls. Okay, and the problem, as I said, is where the parents, they don't want to press, and this
They
is a
don't
man
want
of
to pursue
God.
it
This
because
is a
people
man
are
of God.
afraid, Marcia. People are afraid to come. This is an issue that people are afraid to confront. And then we know in our society, at all levels of society, not just the
Mhm.
church, in other institutions, the thing is to cover things. We want to cover
Yes.
them up, but we can't cover up people's lives. These are real lives, Marcia. These are
Mm.
real lives. Can you imagine the impact that was left on the lives of persons who went for deliverance? And this
Wow.
is the thing, this is the thing that personally hurt me, to think of all the hours as a leader that I had invested into young ladies.
Mhm.
Young ladies that I took them out, I talked to them, I helped them to journal, had personal time to help them to heal from the things that they had gone through. And yet they're going into this office and this man is doing these things to these young ladies. That is the
Mm.
thing that hurt me the most, you
So,
know?
so what someone could ask you the question, and I think that someone is asking it in the chat. So Lynn, did you? I know the answer to this because I understand how the church world works, but
Yes.
everybody here is not church people, so we're gonna talk
Hmm.
plain. So my question is, um, yes, as leaders, you guys got together and you brought the church discipline, okay,
Yes.
and you try to restore him. But as you said, there wasn't much done to the victims.
Yes.
Um, were there any underage girls, and did the leadership think that they needed to take this further and report it to the authorities?
Well, the thing is that at the time, everyone didn't come forward at the same time. So there
Mm-hmm.
was someone who would have been underage at the time, but they didn't come out and say anything until it was later. And it was not at a
Mm-hmm.
time that they wanted to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we were not in, it was not a case where we could go to well, I couldn't because nothing had happened to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
But then other persons were just afraid. Let me tell you why they were afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Because when
That's
the
the part
things
I
started
want.
to
I
come
want to
out,
explain. I want people to understand
yes,
that, and don't mind me stopping you, because I really, this is not just talking about the details of a story. I want this to be a teaching thing.
yes,
Danny Diallo, Bajan living overseas, he says, "Hi, Danny." He says, "Greetings to all. What I'm hearing here is a repeat of the same psychological acts of mental slavery,
yes.
manipulation of religious acts that breeds mental control. This is the heart of this whole thing." And that's what I know, that's what you're going to be talking about, the fear. So continue,
Yes.
please, Lynn.
Right. So persons would have felt, no, remember you are talking about a large contingent of younger persons.
Mm-hmm.
You are in an independent assembly. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
reality is there were some pastors that we reached out to,
Yes.
right? They did not offer any help, Marcia.
What? What are you
Let me
telling? So
tell you
you're telling
straight.
me this
There
is an
are some
old
who look
boys
me in the
club?
face today as if I am a stranger, but they sat across from me when I was a member of that assembly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They did not want to, I don't know if they don't want to ruffle any feathers. I can't say what was their motivation. All I will say is that they did not help the situation, and that is not right.
So the pastors that you guys reached out to pastors. So listen
Mhm.
to church people who are listening. This is not a bashing of the church. This is not a bashing of the church. This is the uncovering of the sin of the church and the
Yes.
sin of the clergy. And we need to deal with the predators that we have inside of the clergy is what
Yes.
we need to. And stop, guys, because I can see some comments on here. Nobody's bashing anybody. Yes, we know it is in other areas. Today we are dealing with the church.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm saying there are these pastors, and I know, Lynn, I believe you. I believe you because I have seen it in operation. So when you went to speak to the pastors about it, the other pastors, they did nothing.
Yeah.
Wow.
They some, I guess some of them were friends, but no one, my problem is that no one of them, the church was disbanded by this stage, Marcia. So I'm
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
saying you have hurting sheep,
mm-hmm,
whether they are part of your assembly or not. Do you just look at them and leave them when you know what they went through? Because
mm-hmm,
these things were documented, Marcia. We
mm-hmm,
were not in a time where everything would have been on the internet, but there
mm-hmm.
is evidence of this thing.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm,
So we had a situation where the some young men, they recorded an incident. This is the incident that exposed this leader. They
mm-hmm,
recorded it. They were in a trustworthy position, so they were able to record it. And they used that as evidence when they came to us, and they used it as evidence when they went to some of the other leaders.
mm-hmm. Outside of the church.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This evidence, when it went to a particular church, a big assembly at that time, was miraculously destroyed.
You're
Okay?
right here in Barbados,
That's
and
right. It was
this thing.
miraculously destroyed. And that
Mm,
destruction did not destroy everything, because the young men were not so foolish as to make only one copy. Okay? But it was miraculously destroyed. All right? And
wow.
so, yes, the evidence against this leader,
So you're saying that other pastors destroyed the
that's
evidence?
what I'm saying.
Oh my God, guys, are you hearing this? Are you hearing this? My goodness. So the past, so you're telling me that this is almost like an old boys club, and they're friends, and there's a connection, and I don't know.
I
I'm just
Marcia,
assuming.
I can't give you, I can't tell you anything, because at the time I couldn't understand what was happening. All I know is that it caused us as persons who would have been part of a church to feel as though we were the ones who were wrong.
Uh-huh. Someone is saying that in here, that a lot of times they make you feel that you are the one that's wrong, that you are
Yes.
unholy because you're
Yes.
bringing this up. And this
Exactly.
is the manipulation, and this is why I'm doing the show. And
Correct.
if you don't want to be on the live, you have a right. You just come off. You come off because listen, when someone is being manipulated, guys, they need truth.
Yes.
They need truth.
Exactly.
And so I'm going to ask you to share. If you're on here, don't just sit and take it for yourself. We're not here just doing, Lynn and I, we spoke before we came on. We're not here to try to tear down nothing. We're
Yes.
here to try to help people.
Correct.
Okay.
Because you know
All of
what,
us, yeah.
Marcia, there are a number of persons. What people don't
Mm-hmm,
see is it's not just about the, and you
mm-hmm,
highlighted it earlier, it's not just about
mm-hmm,
the leader. It is
Yes.
about the persons who are victims. These are people with real lives. Marcia, when you come to Christ, and He is, many people come for healing and they come for restoration and all those things you come looking for. Can you
Mm-hmm.
imagine that the place you come looking for those things is the place that destroys you? There's nothing fair about that. These are lives, these are real lives. So I see a question here from Wayne, and he's asking if I know any of these victims, if after the church disassembled, if they went on to other churches and experienced similar abuse. Let me tell you something, Wayne. A lot of those persons were younger, and some of them today do not want to see the inside of a church.
I don't wrong them.
You
You
understand?
could wrong them.
So
You
this
could
is the
wrong them for
reality.
somebody to abuse them again and
Exactly.
talk
So
about you praying for them.
this is the reality of the impact. Some of them do not, these are people that I pray for and I ask God that, He would have mercy on them. Because think about it. Your leader was supposed to be an under shepherd, and that person, the shepherd, was striking the sheep, was hurting the sheep. These are God's people that are scattered now because of what happened and what took place. And
Mm-hmm.
these people are the reason why I spoke out and why I
Mm-hmm.
wrote my book, because you cannot just disregard people. This is not a business transaction that takes place. This is not money.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, something that is intangible. These are real lives that were impacted and
Mm-hmm.
impacted for eternity.
Mm-hmm. 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 Wow.
So we cannot ignore, these are people that are hurting, some hurting up to today.
This
Now,
is
my
this is
experience was different because I had a foundation in Christ.
mm-hmm.
I was the scribe in the assembly. So I have written everything. Okay? That was my position. I was the scribe. So God placed me there, as uncomfortable as it was, for exactly I left there in 2008.
Mm-mm. Wow, you were there for 8 years?
Correct.
Let me tell. Listen. Lynn. I mean, I do understand in situations like that. But let me tell you something. I would be the one at the police, and by the
But
I know
but
by the time I
Marcia,
get to the police, they would have
let
put me
me
out that
make
church.
something else clear.
Mm-hmm.
We only became aware of these things in late 2007,
Ah, I
right?
see. So all
So
this
that's when
time.
we start. So all the time, this was a small assembly, people were seemingly growing and different things were happening and whatever. So when I became aware of it, I couldn't leave immediately, because the reality is that I had family members in that church. So I was not going to leave them alone. But I can tell you that when I left, I did not leave with my mouth closed.
Ah,
Anybody
good.
asked me why I was leaving, I laid it out very clearly, because I am not going to leave you in a den so that you can die.
Mm,
I am not going to leave quietly. So when I left with, I was the one that I know that me opening my mouth saved many other
mm-hmm,
persons, because they would not have been
mm-hmm,
aware. So I
mm-hmm.
experienced a lot of backlash. I was
Yes.
told that I was attacking the church and I was attacking the
Mm-hmm.
kingdom. And there were persons who were
Yes.
still there at the church they were even against me, because they figured that I was attacking the pastor and all that kind of thing. Now, you imagine
Mm-hmm.
that all this sin has taken place, all these wrong things are taking place. But I was the one that I received so much. I can't tell you. I was just persona non grata,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I
Wow.
went through all of that.
My gosh. So Lynn, I mean, I'm listening to you, and I want to know, did you ever have a meeting with the pastor yourself, or you did it with the leadership team?
Yes, the leaders. We met with him as leadership.
And because they carry such power,
Hmm.
they do, and which is part of why they get away, the clergy, get these predators, they get away with so much, it's because of the power that they have over the people. So
Yes.
explain to me, was it a consensus among the leadership to go to this approach this predator?
Yes, because we had the recordings, and obviously it was not something that we could not deal with because it involved a young lady who belonged to another assembly. So
Mm-hmm.
we had to deal with the situation. This would have been
Mm-hmm.
the second situation we were dealing with as leadership,
Mm.
right?
And
So
was he married?
yes, he was.
And because a lot of times, I want to know, but before you answer about the marriage, so when you went before him, were you guys afraid? Can you explain to me how that meeting was when, because
Mercy, I
somebody
think we
might
were
be
first.
listening.
We were more in shock because it was literally like if the walls were crumbling. People were, you were in shock, and then you were just saddened, and then of course people were just angry. People were angry because it was a great deception. It really was, because the reality is that all of these things would have been happening all along, kind of under your nose, and you didn't realize it. But because it involved someone else, now it came to the fore,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
remember when we met as leaders, we didn't even know where we would go next, what would happen next, because it was like the church was just crumbling, you know? It didn't crumble
Mm-hmm.
immediately, but it was a very difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
Even in that meeting, the leader tried to be manipulative, because I remember at the time they would have been calling my cell phone a lot, because I would have had, I guess they figured I had some influence on the others. So they wanted to influence me first so that I could,
So
kind of influence what was
who is this?
happening.
It was he and his wife were calling your phone, or
No,
just
no, 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 no. His poor wife was just torn up. She was just torn. So he was calling my phone because he
mm-hmm.
was hoping that I could influence the other leaders in terms of, he wanted to tell me what to say. Of course, at that point, he didn't recognize. Marcia, let me say this to you. When
Mm-hmm.
I recognized who he really was, it was not because someone came and told me. One
Mm-hmm.
day, the Holy Spirit ripped open my eyes, and I was like, oh my God, we have been in deep, deep, deep deception. So I didn't know anything at that time. I didn't know any situation. It was just that the Holy Spirit opened my eyes. Now,
Mm-hmm.
after that, I then started to see how he was manipulating and controlling
So
the church.
what is it that the Holy Spirit showed you?
It was just, I just saw him. It's like if I just saw him for exactly who he was,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just controlling and manipulative. And I didn't say anything to anybody, but I just then began to observe,
Mm-hmm. Ah, okay.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's when I observed how he was operating. He wasn't aware that I was aware, because as I said, it was that it's not that flesh and blood had come and said to me, this is who this person is. It
Mm-hmm.
was just one day, just eyes open,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And even though your eyes are open, you still went to the church. So, what were
Yes.
some of the things? Because I know I haven't finished talking about the wife yet, because I'm going to get back there.
Okay.
But in the church, because somebody is listening and watching today. Remember, as we said, this is a teaching program. We want to
Mm-hmm.
help somebody, right? We want to help those in the churches, that if you have a predator in the church, you expose the predator. Okay,
Yeah.
and if it means that the church, that particular church, needs to crumble, let it crumble.
Yes.
Let it crumble. Let it crumble. God will resurrect his church. But that kind of thing should not be, we are going to think it's going to continue because we want to help God. We don't need to help God.
No.
Let it crumble. Let it
Exactly.
crumble if it needs to crumble, because the foundations are bad in a lot of these places. So Lynn, what was he? So tell me, typically, what was he like
Okay.
when he wasn't abusing these young girls? What was
Okay.
he like?
All right. So the as a person, he tended to be very detail oriented. So what would happen is that in the church, the church did a lot. We were we're considered a small assembly, probably just about
Mhm.
50 persons at the most, 50 or just
Mhm.
over 50.
Right.
And we did big things. So we had big conventions and, persons coming in from overseas, and big things were happening. So
Mhm.
the church was always busy. Everybody, listen,
Mhm.
everybody was tired. And I think I
Mhm.
say it all the time that that's the reason why I couldn't see, because I was too tired to see. I was busy because I was the worship leader in the assembly, and I was one of the main leaders, what we call the core leadership. So
Mhm.
there was always a meeting or a practice or preparation,
Mhm.
preparing documents, preparing to liaise with persons from overseas who would have been coming in, hosting
Mhm.
persons. We did a
Mhm.
lot of traveling, which, let me tell you, was a guise, because a
Mhm.
lot of when we went on those trips and we were tired after ministry and stuff, we didn't know what he was up to. But those trips were time that was time for him to go and do what he needed to do. And then um what you saw was that persons, because they were so busy, there was a lot of manipulation. So people were manipulated through the use of guilt,
Mhm.
like you have to be at this meeting, or you have to be at this prayer meeting, or you have to be accountable to this person if you miss something, and say why you missed it, and
Mhm.
make sure you catch up. And it was just something going on.
So
Then, of
this was
course,
his operations outside of the sexual abuse. This is now how he
yes,
operated as a pastor in front of you. So he was
yes,
very detail oriented, which tells me that he was a control freak. So
yes,
he
he
and
was.
so and he wanted to know where you were, and you had to give account of where you were. Is that kind of, yeah?
Yeah, yes,
Mhm.
because the church was everything. Everything. It was, no, get me, don't get me wrong. It was under the guise of God. So you were not thinking that you're doing this thing for church, you were doing this thing for God,
Yes.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where persons became vulnerable, because they were committed to God. So
Mm-hmm.
this is how deception seeps in, because it looks so much like if it's genuine. It looks so much like if you are doing, what God would want you to do. But
Mm-hmm.
really and truly, the things that you're committing yourself to are things that, sometimes God Himself didn't even show up for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because
Right.
God didn't put His people down here to be used and abused.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? And that was
Yeah.
what was taking place. So you had persons, let me tell you, in terms of money, there were persons they were paying um they were paying tithes, they were paying first fruit, they were paying
Hold a
for.
minute. Hold a minute. So I think generally people know what tithes is. So remember, we can't talk a bunch of Christianese because everybody on
Okay,
here
yes,
not
yes, yes,
Christian.
yes.
So they were paying tithes, and
Yes.
tithes is 10% of your earnings, and first fruits is what?
First fruit was the first of anything, any new set of income that you get, or anything that you do for the first time, you have to give this first fruit offering. And that was
Okay.
pushed.
So if you got a job, then you take your first pay and you give it to the church.
Yes.
Oh Lord of mercy. And if when January comes, the first, I hear some people talk about giving their first month paycheck. In
Yeah.
the whole
All
of
kinds
it.
of things. Yeah.
So all of this was happening inside the church that seemed in a lot of these churches, this is normal, isn't it?
It is. It is.
It is
It
normal.
is.
So you're paying the tithes, so the 10%, you're doing first fruits, and what else?
Um, well, I heard you say something, you were talking about your pastor and how he would give you money. And so there were positive things happening as well, Marcia. Let me say
Mhm.
that, because
Yes.
I know persons that, we sent to school. We gave them
Mhm.
money out of the offerings so that they could complete university and that kind of thing. So there were positive
Mhm.
things going on as
Mhm.
well. It wasn't all negative, you know.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and but of course, anytime there's deception, you can't just do bad things all the time. Because
Right.
then you will
Good
not you
point.
will not be deceived.
Good point.
it's
Good
going to,
point.
you are going to be in a situation that looks legitimate. It
Mm-hmm.
feels legitimate. The things that happen will seem to be, on the up and up, and everything. So this
Mm-hmm.
is not a case where persons are just following willy-nilly.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be a buy-in, and that happens by how you draw people in and then how you treat them, but eventually the real thing comes out, huh? So
Mm-hmm.
persons come in, and because it's a small assembly, you can easily touch people's lives and that kind of thing,
Right,
right?
right.
So there was that personal touch.
Mm-hmm.
And persons today, these people are my family today.
Mm-hmm.
We went on trips together, and we spent a lot of time together. We went through hell and back together. So we are family
Yes.
up to today,
Today,
right?
because you develop that, and that's part of why a lot of times the church members find it difficult to report the clergy, because they
Yes.
develop, it's almost like a father, if that person become a
Yes,
father and
exactly.
this is, to me, this is the worst place for this kind of thing to happen, because
Yes, yes,
it gets into your soul, because you're so connected,
yes,
emotionally,
exactly.
to the leader, to the members. You don't want to mash up the church.
Yes,
You love the people in the church. This is diabolic, man.
it
This
is.
is
It
terrible.
is. It is. It is
Mm,
really diabolic. I say it seems to have just, bubbled out the earth of, it's just so deep.
mm-hmm,
It really is
mm-hmm,
just so deep. So yes, as you said, a lot of persons called him father. To him, they
mm.
were he was their daddy, because you
Ah.
had, think about it, a lot of young women who had poor relationships with their father, a lot of young women who would have been neglected or abused in some way. There were young men as well, but in terms of the deliverance and stuff, that was mainly women.
Did you
So,
hear
but
that,
there
ladies?
were there
Ladies,
were
pause
males
right
as
there.
well.
Pause there. And didn't you see, Lynn, that a
Yes,
lot of the deliverances in in St. Vincent and the Grenadines were also
correct.
women?
Yes,
Women, you're listening to me, as I said, and I know it's going to seem like a broken record. This show is not for sensationalism. I'm honestly trying to help people. So you're listening, you're part of a church, you got to keep your eyes and your ears open. That clergy that you're thinking is your father, and thinking is this and that, sometimes they are grooming you.
yes,
They're giving you things. The prayer is part of the group, can be part of the grooming. A lot of things happen, ladies, in the vestry and in the office. Okay,
yes.
in the pastor's office.
When they're
So you
most
have to be.
vulnerable.
Yes, your most vulnerable, ladies. Stop
Yeah,
being so needy. You're too
yes.
needy.
Um,
Continue, please.
Yeah. So there were males as well, but you would find that a lot of the targets would have been females because of those issues that I highlighted. And
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that he had been pushing to get this program started. And I thank God every day that this program did not get off the ground. And because it was called ER, it was going to be called emotional restoration. So that would have been the breeding ground for his next set of targets. My God, I am so glad that that never ever got off the ground. That was one of the last things that would have been planned before the church then experienced all that it did. And then eventually it was closed down because everybody just left. People had to
Mm.
leave because the truth
So he
came out,
was
and the
he
truth
was
was too
starting
real.
something about called emotional restoration. It was now going to
Yes.
be a ministry.
Yes, it would have
Wow.
been a
So he
ministry.
was going to have a ministry, will have a whole set of targets then in this
Yes.
ministry.
Yes, that would have been that. That's exactly
Wow.
what that would have been. A pool of targets. And that's sad. That's sad. That is
That
sad.
is that is something else. So on the surface of it, there was a lot of offerings, lots of different offerings. So you have the tithes, you have the first fruits, and then people were, giving into different kinds of,
Yeah.
other things that were happening. Then
Yeah.
he was very detail oriented, and therefore could have been, he was a little controlling and wanting to know, you had to give account for everything that you were doing. So he had that control. The people were calling him daddy and father and all kinds of different things
Yeah.
in the church. And so talk to me about in terms of his preaching. Somebody listening, I want to be able to identify these kind of predators. Was there anything different that he was preaching than the other the pastor down the road?
No, the preaching was, I remember initially the forum was kind of different, and you were it wasn't the regular, like you were allowed, because it was a smaller assembly, you would have been able to, interact during the messages and everything. Are we still on, Marcia?
Yes, we're on. Yes, we're on. Sorry
Oh,
about
okay,
that. So
because everything went
you were
dark just now.
you were
Sorry.
yes, you were able to you were,
We
you
were
said it
able
was
to
an
interact and
interactive.
ask questions
Ah,
and that kind of thing.
mhm,
But
mhm.
eventually that had to be stopped because there were persons who were asking too many questions, and
Ah,
they didn't want too many questions, because then that would have interrupted what they had to say, right? Um
oh,
a lot of the messages were, there were messages that would have conditioned your thinking so that you would be more malleable and easier to manipulate. So you were
mhm,
given messages that focus obviously on
mhm,
giving to God and giving giving money and that kind of stuff. I can't remember all the messages. No, as I said, I was described, so I wrote these things down.
mhm,
I could probably give you a whole list of sermons if you wanted them,
mhm,
but
mhm,
the eventually I realized that some of the teachings were coming from the internet, so they were regurgitating,
mhm,
but it didn't seem that way at first. It seemed like if you were getting this revelation, so this
mhm,
person seems to be hearing from God and bringing a good teaching and those kind of things. What was
mhm,
really happening when you start to unpack it is that there was a lot of truth, but it was mixed with heresy, because if you're going to deceive people, you can't give them only truth. You got to put
mhm,
your heresy in between there so that you
mhm.
can create the scenario where people can be. Yes, I saw a comment there. That's what made me pause. He said narcissistic people that have authority over people that are
Mhm,
not thinking. And yes,
mhm.
people were not thinking as they were supposed to. But you
Yes,
know what?
yes.
A lot of us are not taught to think, Marcia.
No, that is
A
a
lot of
that is a
church people
whole
are not
nother
taught to
show.
think because you don't question authority.
They don't quest. Somebody wrote here, usually the message is Camille and Lindsay focus on obeying the leaders who
Oh,
were
yes. Oh, my goodness.
so then
Definitely.
listen, this whole thing about not thinking, right?
Yeah.
That we need to do a whole show on that, because a
De-
lot of people doesn't
Listen.
need to be freed of that. People outside of,
Exactly.
not in the church, don't understand, but it's a thing where you're not so, and you see people. I'm doing the show now, let me tell you, I would be enemy number one after this, trust me,
Yes.
because they don't want, you can't think, you can't present a different opinion. It's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Listen, my mom used to say this all the time, because my mom used to have lots of sayings, but she always used to say that God will save fools, but he don't keep them, right?
Hmm, hmm,
So she was trying to say that you might come as a fool, but you can't stay as one, right? You got to
hmm,
get some sense, right?
hmm.
That's what she would say
Yes.
all the time. But we as a people on a whole in general are not taught to think. So
Hmm,
at the time, you're taught about obedience, and I mean, don't get me wrong, that is biblical, because
hmm,
when Jesus spoke in Matthew 28, he said teach them to obey, right?
hmm,
So there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that when people are being taught to obey man and not
hmm.
being taught to obey God and God's
Yes.
will and his
Hmm,
way, right?
hmm,
The problem is when you take the message and you twist it so that you
hmm,
get persons that you can use and persons that you can manipulate and control for your
Mm-hmm.
benefit. And that's really the issue when it comes to predators. It's about
Mm-hmm.
control, it's about power.
Grooming. They're grooming and preparing you so
Yes,
that
because
when
they have
when
to
they're ready
create
to tell
persons for their
you,
kingdom.
and that's why people don't understand. So someone is going to say, why are you keep going back to the church? Remember, it's years and it's years, and it plays on the mind, and they already have you. So unless that person goes through counseling, and that's why a lot of times they don't believe these women, because they're like, you're an adult, or
Yeah.
it happened to you when you were 13. Why didn't you speak about it? Or why didn't you do this? And why? We have to understand the level of control, manipulation, and the level of grooming
Yes.
that happens. So you're saying that he was, the preaching was, so he charismatic? Was he a charismatic leader?
Um, to some extent. To some extent, I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was he flashy in his dressing? And I'm asking this
Oh yes,
because
definitely.
I
Yes,
asked you
definitely.
for a reason. Not that some of them can be frumpy dressing. They don't dress too good, and they're still dirty, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of these clergy, when you see they start to come up with them about shine shoes and alligator shoes, and the whole colorful jackets, and bling, all the bling and ting and all of these things, you got to watch some of these people. Watch them,
Yeah.
right? So he was a flashy dresser, right?
Yes, definitely. That
And
dress
probably
was very important.
dressing was important.
Yes.
Pimps. Somebody say acting like pimps.
Yeah.
You see, this is what is happening. This is what is happening. And
Yeah.
for those of you who are watching, this is not something that we're talking that happened in another country. We're talking about the Caribbean. First of all, we did St. Vincent and the Grenadines a couple of weeks ago, and we are now focused on Barbados, and Jamaica is coming up, and we want to do Trinidad as well, because people need to be free. I
Yes.
personally believe, don't you think, Lynn, that there
Of
are lots of
course.
people in these churches that need to be free,
Yes.
and that's what we are trying to do here. All right,
Yep.
so
That's
that.
why I keep saying that's why I wrote my book. I
Mm-hmm,
didn't release it at the time when everything took place because,
mm-hmm,
again, it was a very sensitive situation. Marcia, it's not
mm-hmm,
just young women, or sometimes it's not just single persons who are impacted in situations like this. The
mm-hmm.
ramifications go to families, you know? So I
Explain to
could
me.
not,
Explain all of that. What do you mean?
because sometimes the persons who are hurting are
Mm-hmm.
wives.
Our wives. Ha. Oh my goodness. So you're saying, so this was a question I was asking about the wife of, so they have children.
Yes.
The predator have a wife and have children. So
No,
talk
they
to me
didn't have
about
any
that.
children. They had a wife.
They had a wife. So
Yeah.
explain. So what was she, what was she doing? What was her response in all of this?
Um, I actually, let me say that I addressed her situation somewhat in, not in this volume one, but in the volume two that I'm about to release.
Yes, this is
Because
your book. This is Lynn's book that is on the screen. And just so you know, she didn't come on here to sell the book, and she didn't even know that I was going to put it up on the screen. But she's my sister, and my black sister, and she's invested money into a book, and I put it up. So for those of you who are thinking that she came on here to try to sell any book, not at all. I decide I'm putting up the book, right, Lynn?
that's right.
Okay, so continue talking about the. I want to hear about the wife, because I,
Yeah.
I want to know.
I
Yeah.
Marcia, I want to address her. As I said, I put a chapter in to address her situation in the book I'm going to be releasing now. And
Mm-hmm.
this lady would have been, she was my best friend.
Huh. How is
So this
that?
situation, actually, it is only because of her that I actually got involved in the church, because she was an upstanding person. She was fiery, she was feisty, she was a wonderful woman. And for a long time, I could not understand, because she has passed away. Let me say that she has passed away, and
What?
for a long time, yes, for a long time I felt as though, I couldn't. I was asking God, why did she have to first, go through this with this person, and then she passed away as after, and didn't get what I thought would have been a redemption. But God has His wisdom and He has His ways. However, she, like us, would have been duped for a long time. Of course, she would have seen his actions on a closer level.
Mm-hmm.
So she was not aware, because she was sick for a long time. So she was not aware of all the things that he would have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I when everything came to the fore, not just when the Holy Spirit opened my eyes, but then after, when persons started to come to the fore and to actually confess to us as the leadership, I realized that she would not know any of these things, because obviously by now, because I have stepped away or I have left the church, I am persona non grata. So that kind of separated us. So
Mm-hmm.
what I had to do was to reach out to her sister
Mm-hmm.
and try to make her sister aware of the horrible things that were taking place. And I
So
think
hold a
I
minute. So she never in her lifetime, when she was alive, she never left him.
she did and she did divorce him.
She divorced him.
She
But the
divorced
thing
him.
is, so so did she, so she started to believe then at some point.
Yes, she recognized that it was true. It was not just persons making up lies or making up
Mm-hmm.
accusations. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously this is a case where your wedding vows have been violated for a long time, because Marcia, this person was actively involved with some of the young ladies from the church, actively for a long time, even though they were calling him daddy, and even though he was supposedly counseling them and all those kind of things, he was involved with them. He was sleeping with them. I talking about actively sleeping with them for a long time, and he acted like a somebody say acting like a pimp, and I'm going to say that, yes, it would have to be that, because you're a father figure, but you're sleeping with this person, and you're giving them money. I guess the money was to keep them quiet or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes he doesn't have to give them money. He just giving them a prophetic word, and
Yes,
he's
exactly.
don't you people don't understand that kind of dynamic as
Yeah.
well. He's
Right.
offering
So
for them, and they feel like that, and he's pimping them with that.
yes,
Someone asked me, was she married before the church was formed, or did she become wife during those church years?
before the church was formed. Yeah, before the
Wow.
church was formed. A very wonderful person, very capable. She had strong administrative skills as well. So those skills were, utilized in the formation of the church and running the church and that kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
she was I would say she was, in a lot of ways, she was the glue, because everybody looked up to her, and not just looked up to her
Mm-hmm.
as in it was not it was not an unrealistic respect. She deserved it. She was a genuine person. But
Mm-hmm.
many persons didn't think that, because by the ending, when they found out all that was taking place, they thought that she would have been involved along with him in deceiving the members, right? And
Mm. So
it appeared
people
like that.
started to blame her.
Yes,
Mm.
right. But
Wow.
she was essentially, she was essentially duped, like a lot of other persons. That's what it really came
Right.
down to. And then
Right.
because she
And probably
carried illness for a long time,
manipulated. I mean, she's
yeah,
seeming like a strong woman on the outside, but remember,
yes,
we talked about the demonic influence as well, and so he
yes,
might have also been manipulating this woman as well. You
yes, that
see,
was
so
definitely
it's wow,
happening. Yeah,
wow, wow, wow,
it was a
wow.
very ugly situation, Marcia, a very ugly and very deep situation. And you know it was it had it was just like a situation that was just glossed over by persons. Glossed over, yes, it was gossip, and on a hot topic for a lot of persons in the church world, but then it was glossed over. And then
Mm,
persons who were really hurting and impacted by this situation were left to just fend for themselves, and no
mhm,
one really coming in to say, look, come, let's help you heal from this.
mm,
That is what really was needed in the situation, and that didn't take place. So that's
mhm,
one of the reasons why I believe that this, what I wrote would have
mhm,
been written out of that heart. I have
mhm,
no intention of pulling down the church. And God knows
mhm.
that. God knows that.
Yeah.
Because
And
this
what?
I could do differently. I could do it differently. I could come out, I can call names, I can call situations, I can bring evidence. But these
Mhm,
are people's lives. They're already victimized, and there's no reason why I should add to that victimization by the things
mhm,
that I say. What I
mhm,
really want to bring or highlight is the pain that persons experience when they are caught in situations like this, and that these are real people who need help, and
mhm,
they
mhm,
don't need to be called. This is what we do. We say, oh, these people have church hurt, and we try to shut them down.
mhm,
This is not church hurt. This is hurt.
mhm,
This is a real hurt because a real situation took place. And
mhm,
these people need to be given the chance to heal.
mm. And that's the thing that I notice. Huh. I saw something happen in a church, and I don't have the video here, but I'm going to try to find it as we're talking. Where there was a pastor who, repeatedly for nine years. I mean, it was for many years because he knew this little girl, and he kept grooming her. Praying for her, checking up on her, and so on. And then when she got to 16, she went to counseling in his office, and he raped her on the office floor. Okay.
Okay.
And that continued, Lynn. And the thing about it is that he when she finally, 20 something years, mustered the courage, and people say, why did she wait so long to do it? Right? She was not married and was able, she had that strength.
Okay.
And they confronted him. He went before the church, and this pretend confession, and so on. And the woman took the microphone and went up and let them know that she was underage. And it
Right.
didn't happen one time, as he said. It was for 9 years.
Wow. Yep. My
you
Lord.
know and so the victims, and I brought that up because you were talking, about victims, and
Yes.
saying that they don't get what they need. They don't get
No.
that support.
No, the
you
church, the
know
church quietens them. It shuts them down. The church says, they're looked at as someone who's bitter or angry
Mhm,
or just looking for revenge or whatever. It's like
mhm,
people are afraid to openly deal with something. I
mhm,
mean, listen, to Jesus that we serve, he's no coward. This is a
mhm,
person who went into the temple and overthrew the money changers table on the principle that this house is to be the house of God, and it is a house of
mhm,
prayer. Or he's not afraid to confront issues. But
mhm,
we have somehow created this Jesus who is this little meek and mild person, frightened to deal with real issues. When he met the woman at the well, he said, I know who you are. You had
mhm,
5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your own. He knew people,
mhm,
he saw them
mhm,
for who they were and was able
mhm,
to address issues right on. Not this kind of frightened people that we have created, and it's really just this little facade. The church is not so fragile that if we were to
mhm,
come out and openly deal with a situation, it's going to fall apart. So why
mhm,
is dealing with the situation causing the church to fall apart? But the actual situation that is taking place, the actual thing that these people are doing that others who are not a part of the church can see with their two eyes, happening every day. What about that? Does that not tear
mhm.
down the church?
That's the thing. That's the thing. And someone we have here, Linda Herbert, is saying people are afraid of the backlash and the ostracism, and that is
Yes.
why they're not speaking out. There is one young lady, and I was ready to deal with it, and they stopped me. But I had just come here, and I didn't, it didn't make any sense to me. The child was only 15, and
Wow.
she went to this prophetic encounter, this prophetic thing that they announced this prophet was in town. And he told her the same thing. He said, there are things about you that I want to say to you, but I can't say it here. He
Right.
called his armor bearer. Can you give her the hotel that I'm staying at?
Wow.
Because I'm this is going to move you to another level, he tells her. Okay. And she goes to the hotel. She said when she went there, she was a little nervous, but there are other people waiting in line, but he left her for the last.
Okay.
And then she went in, and he started to he praying for her. And then hands started to move down to different parts of her, and all of that. And the little girl, she came up to my dance school crying,
Wow.
auntie, he abused me. We had another one. She was sick home, and the prophet went home. Her mother brought the prophet home to pray for her. And as she was it was praying for her, he somehow, I don't know how it worked, but that way, but he somehow started to penetrate her from behind. And then she had to
Wow.
she think, but the mother, they would not believe her. Not even the mother believed her. And so,
Wow.
these are the kinds of things right here in Barbados. Some things would happen to make your skin crawl. I have heard, I've counseled, not counseled because I'm not a counselor, but because I deal with young women through my art school. They'll tell you, there's at the same Abundant Life Assembly, so many things have come out of there. People's Cathedral, lots of some of the Anglican churches. It's
Yeah.
all across, and these are
Yeah.
allegations that were never,
Dealt
never,
with.
no case filed, wasn't dealt with at all.
Yeah.
So this is a serious case, and you are talking about the victims. And I'm remembering, as you talked about the victims, I remember those young ladies, and how they were crying. And to this day, a lot of them have not. There's one I know, she can't even keep a marriage.
Wow.
There are problems, you know.
Yes.
As you talk about the victims, talk about some of the issues, the long-term issues that these victims go through.
Well, I think I would have highlighted earlier that there are persons who today they do not even, okay, there's one, and I'm kind of giving a preview because this is, I'm dealing with this in my second book. But there's
Mm-hmm.
one who she said, today that she doesn't think that God likes her.
Mm,
She doubts everything. She does not have a relation. She doesn't know how to get herself back together. Because
mm,
your belief in God now is shaken. You don't know what was belief in God and what was belief in that person and how to separate the two. So
mm,
it's hard for persons then to kind of get their footing and say, but I want to serve God, but is this
mm-hmm,
really real? Because they don't know what was real and what
mm-hmm.
was deception and what was, what came out of that abuse. So then
Right.
they can't really get their relationship, get their mind right so that that
Mm-hmm,
relationship with God can continue. There are
mm-hmm,
persons who, there's some persons who have gone back to church,
mm-hmm,
or they have chosen a church that looks nothing like the one that we would have attended. So this rocks a person's world.
mm-hmm,
It rocks their worldview. They don't know how to get their footing. They don't know how to look at God anymore. They do not trust leadership. They don't
mm-hmm,
trust. I mean, for me, it has made me more aware of, I can see persons.
mm-hmm,
It has given me a lot of insight. So there are times when I had this experience where I went to this church, and the pastor, first time I've gone to this church. And in this conversation, I found out about the leaders and who was sleeping with each other and how the pastor could see them, and all kind of things happened in this is the first time I've gone to this church. And I recognized that she was operating in a similar spirit to the leader that I would have been under when it was at that church.
mm-hmm,
And I remember she came, she said to me, I want to, the Lord has shown me something about you, but I can't say it now because it would be embarrassing. And then she said, and you know, you get angry fast.
Mm,
And she said that she attacked me because she knew that I could see her for exactly who she was. So this
mm-hmm.
is now a different level of seeing persons and seeing how they operate because of that
Yes.
experience that I have been through. All
Mm-hmm.
right, that particular situation with that leader, she didn't have anything to say to me. She was
Mm-hmm.
lying because she was operating in the same spirit that he was operating in. But
Mm-hmm.
what it did for some persons was to make them, you know, increase their wisdom, increase their ability to see and to see
Mm-hmm.
spiritually and to understand things. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, to be able to help persons who are going through a similar situation. But then there are other persons who, especially if they were younger, not just in terms of age, but younger in terms of having a relationship with Christ, those persons are the ones who struggle the most because then they do not know what is real. They don't really know who God is and how they can relate to God. And that is
Mm-hmm.
that is a very, very grave situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because what is the purpose of the church if not to share Christ?
Mm-hmm.
When the church hurts these people and they are hurting real people and they're out there, they don't want to come to Christ, and nobody takes responsibility or becomes accountable for those actions. You have a lot of persons out there who are literally just hurting and they don't know where to go. They don't know who they can trust. They don't know what to do. These are
Mm-hmm.
real people that need Christ as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, this quote that I have here, and I believe from the Washington Post, it says the church is better off if every victim is helped to recover and every offender is forced to deal with their crime.
Yes.
This is the code of ethics that we
Yeah.
need to abide by. This is what, if
Yes.
every victim is helped, you are a member of a church and you are listening, you're a leader of a church, the keeping the church together is not more important than helping the victim.
Yes.
It's not more important. If every victim is helped to recover and every offender is forced to deal with their crime. And this is coming out of an article talking about the grooming behavior of pastoral predators.
Right.
And you know, I I tell you something, and although I had such a good experience with my pastor there in Jamaica, Pastor Clive Bean, who took care of the young people in the church and helped a lot of us to do well in our studies and so on. He and his wife, you know, he got married right there in the church. Everybody supported because he was a good pastor. Because you have some good pastors out there.
Yes. You
That's the
do.
truth. You do have some
You do.
good pastors. And you know, what was key about Pastor Matt Bean, I'm talking about him now, and I should bring him on the show one of these days, is that he was not trying to control you.
Yeah.
And these are signs. Lynn, you talked about it today. The kind of control, wanting, and for him, and he had no, you know, our Pastor Matt Bean, he had people that he was accountable to. He was part of an organization. Not that work all the time, because even in that big organization, New Testament Church of God, they do the switching around. If a pastor commits you know, kind of any kind of abuse, they switch them, just move him, and he goes to another church because he was good. But then there was another one who came after him, who molested my friend at 10 years old.
Wow.
You understand? So
Hmm.
they were there, and you would see how this grooming happened. So to this day, Lynn, I am telling you, and to those who are watching, one of the types of people that I'm afraid of being alone by myself is pastors. Do you think
Wow.
that that should be the case?
Wow. Of
I'm
course
serious.
not. Of
I'm
course
very
not.
on my guard. I'm on my guard speaking to pastors. Pastor, they can call me too late. Don't I'm very suspicious of pastors, and
Wow.
it shouldn't be that way.
Wow.
It shouldn't be that way, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
That's me. I if
Yeah.
I'm in, I would think I would think twice to go into a car with a pastor by myself.
Wow.
That's the dead truth. And it
That's
is,
really sad.
yes,
That's
but
really
because
sad.
you know why it is so? For me, I have to protect myself. And let me
Yeah.
tell you something. I tell you, because of the art school that I run, I have heard them. I
Yeah.
remember, Lee, I go back to this. I gotta tell you this little experience. I did the walk holy,
Yeah.
and I remembered that one of the pastors that was so against what I was doing and went on the radio and so on was Wayne T. Bishop, right? And that man, I mean, and whatever I'm saying is in the newspaper, and it happened to me, so I'm speaking about it. And he would malign us, Dave and I would. I mean, he would do all. He would we were would be the message on a Sunday morning, you know. And I lived to see the day when there were members of his church that he was molesting, right? Who they were alleging that he was molesting them. The allegations were against him. Were able to come to me right there at my
Wow.
school to speak about it. And these allegations against people like him have been going on for years, and nothing has been done about it. The
Yes.
allegations were brought against him in the U.S. He came down here and he started a church in Barbados. When the allegations got hot and hot and hot and hot, he left and he went back to the U.S. and then he comes back here. There are no systems. There's nothing in place.
Yes. Exactly.
And
That is a
I'm not afraid
serious
to call
issue.
his name because these are allegations. And it
Right.
is true that these things, these are the things that the allegations are there. It happened. I
Right.
could tell you the names if I want, if it came to it, and I have to call the name of the victims to whomever, I can, because I know it happened.
Yeah.
I know they came to me about it.
Right. And because there's no accountability, and these people can shut down and
Mm-hmm.
restart and start
Yes.
up a new thing. Because no,
Mm-hmm.
think about it. If nobody says anything about what happens, then that
Mm-hmm.
person who is not charged,
Mm-hmm.
and when everything dies down, they can go now, they can restart a new assembly under a new name
Mm-hmm.
and do the same thing to another set of people, because
Mm-hmm.
we do not deal with these things. We do not deal with these people and deal with these issues openly. So
Mm-hmm.
by not doing anything, you are perpetuating the situation. You are not
Mm-hmm.
causing it, but you are adding to it.
Yes.
I can't say that persons are not doing anything because of one thing or the next thing. I can't give you the list of reasons why nothing is being done, but I can tell
Mm-hmm.
you the fact that nothing is being done is
Mm-hmm.
adding to the situation. It's not
Mm-hmm.
helping it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People might
Yes.
have different reasons for not confronting or doing whatever, but the reality is, and it's a reality, because these people
Mm-hmm.
exist, these people are real, and these people hurt, and these people
Mm-hmm.
have needs, and these people are God's people who were hurt
Yes.
by the persons who were supposed to help them and lead them and
Yes.
guide them to a place of maturity in Christ. Right? That
This
is
is.
the reason why the pastor exists, as one of the gifts to help to mature believers, not attack them, not abuse them, not use them, not discard them, not
Mm-hmm.
malign them, not throw them aside, and then make them feel like they're the ones who did something wrong.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That
Yes.
is wrong.
I want to hear your thoughts, because one of the things I know from the time we spoke this week, I could hear your cry about these victims, and I know that God's heart is weeping over them as well.
Of course.
And it is because of the kind of relationship. People don't understand the relationship between a pastor and his congregant.
Yeah.
And how that relationship is formed, and how it grows and matures,
Yes.
and
Yes.
why it is the most disgusting thing for someone in the clergy to pray on a congregant because of that kinds of relationship and the way that it is set up. You see, it's
Yeah.
very difficult. This Mike Phillips and Julia Dahl, they've written this article, and guys, you can go and check it out. It's called Grooming Behavior of Pastoral Predators, Part 1. And I just want to read a couple things in it, Lynn.
Okay.
Right? So, and it says, the first part of it says, this may be a difficult post for several reasons. First, this post asks the reader to reflect on what the term pastor means to them. Commonly, pastors are understood to be spiritual overseers, right? If what you believe about all pastors is dependent on the image, the faith, or charisma of your own pastor, this post asks the reader to lay aside the naive ideal that all pastors are
Or-
divinely called shepherds.
That's right.
And this
That
is the
is
part,
it, Marcia.
isn't this a part? This is a part that a lot of these people who they got their sheep, and even that word sheep, there is sometimes, it connotes such a negativity that you don't ask
Yeah.
no question, you blindly follow them. They tell you, like Jim Jones, that to drink poison, you drink the poison. They tell you to take off your clothes, you take off your clothes. They tell you give them oral sex, you give them oral sex, because they see themselves as sheep in a negative sense. But we're not
Yeah.
sheep of the pastors. When the Bible talks about sheep, Lynn, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is this about in relation to God,
Yeah. Of course.
right? So they take it to be themselves. So then the sheep are now, they you understand, and they are working on behalf of God. We understand that. But the member, the congregant, needs to understand that the ultimate authority is God, and
It's
they,
God.
being sheep, they're following God. You know,
Yes.
that's the thing. It goes on to say there are some narcissistic men who lead a church or ministry and use the flock for their own gratification. And let us also say women, because I know of women as well that
Okay.
do this to people under their care. Often this will manifest in sexual relationships with church attenders. This behavior by some destroys many decent images of healthy pastors and other church or ministry leaders. I don't blame anyone for struggling to confront and accept this conclusion. And it goes on to say, here's the reality we deal with. Pastors can be roughly grouped in three categories: those that are divinely called and are faithful servants of God. Right? And then, because we agree that there are pastors that are not every pastor, not every clergy is doing this.
Yeah.
Okay. Number two, according to this article, the next category is divinely called servants presently tempted and struggling with personal sins. They
Right.
deal with their own weaknesses but do not use others for their gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Number
These are
three,
the ones that you would try to restore. And these are
the
the ones that
church,
might be humble enough to want to be restored as well.
and to come into the church and to say, I'm having a problem,
Yeah.
right? But they're not using others for their gratification. Very important. In number three, intentional usurpers of the pulpit and the congregation for the purposes of their own enjoyment and control.
Yes.
And this is the thing, guys. This is where, and this is why I was asking you, Lee, about his behavior outside of the sexual allegations of the sexual molestation. What was his behavior like? Because
Right.
outside of that, because then you start to see the control and the
Yeah.
manipulation
Yeah.
outside of that, right?
Marcia, if we look at Second Timothy chapter 3 and verse 13,
Mhm,
I'll read it from the King James Version because I don't have the New King James near to me, but I'll mention something
mhm.
from there. It says, "But
Yes.
evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and
Yes.
being deceived." Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that a lot of these persons have been deceived and they're deceiving others.
Yes. 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 Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So we tend to think, as the article says, we tend to be naive and think that most of them fit into the first category. but the reality is that all of them do not.
Right, right. Let's go back up to the categories here. Yes, these three categories. So you're saying that
We
sometimes,
automatically
yeah.
we automatically think that all of them are divinely called and faithful servants of God. The reality is that all of them are not.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are deceivers.
Yes.
They
Wow.
themselves have been deceived and they're deceiving many. It's what you would call it if you have the genuine thing and you kind of have this knockoff, this
Mm-hmm.
the knockoff, the one
The
that's not
knockoff.
real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And oftentimes it's those type of persons that are causing the pain and
Mm-hmm.
causing these problems that we're talking about. But because we think everybody is in category one,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a case where the entire church is being blamed.
Mm-hmm.
But really and truly, it's these deceivers, these
Mm-hmm.
vipers, these apostles of darkness, right?
Mm-hmm.
That have infiltrated, and they are the ones perpetuating these problems.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
that's why I focus on deception, because Marcia, this is about deception. This expose isn't just about an actual situation. This is about the deception that is taking place. People have to open
Mm-hmm.
up their eyes. I
Mm-hmm.
heard the doctor that you had from St. Vincent, he said something that I said the exact same thing since 2008. You think these things are going to happen in the future, but they're
Mm-hmm.
happening right now. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They have been
Mm-hmm.
happening for time immemorial,
Yes, 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 yes.
right?
I mean, this is groundbreaking stuff, and it's time that we do something about it. Oh, here's my friend Astor Jarrett from Jamaica, and this woman is a woman who really taught me how to pray. Astra, oh my goodness, and I know she would not stand for anything like that. Astra is very serious, and Astra said encourage your students to report the crimes, and I do, Astra, but the kind of belief that they have, I don't know if I'm saying this right, Lynn, but they have been so groomed into following authority, and the scriptures have been used on a lot of these people, to let them believe that they can't do anything about it, and they
Yes,
can't
don't
mash
be
up the
afraid.
church, and they can't destroy the church, and they can't destroy
Yes,
the family, and so on, because the little young girl, who a dancer, beautiful dancer, and in her case, I thought that she would want us to report it. This girl was breaking down, and so, I mean, it was terrible, and no, because first she think her mother gonna kill her, that kind of thing. So
right,
it's a whole, there's one student that whose father was a worship leader. The father the father, Lynn, was molesting this girl. No,
wow,
that one had me. I had to go to counseling over that.
okay,
I had to see counseling. That one near take me out of my mind, man.
wow,
Because here it is, he was a worship leader, and not only that, he used to give people children's lessons. You understand? And this father was showing this child porn, his daughter porn, and raping his child. And he
okay,
was a
wow,
worship leader for a church here. And then
okay,
let me tell you, yes, it's a worship leader for a church in Barbados, in Oistins. I know the church.
wow,
And he this is what he was doing to his daughter. And and that one, because we use another route, because she told her school, okay, so then we conferred with the principal, and we did another thing, so they found another way to get that
to work
reporting.
around it,
Yes, that went to the courts.
right,
And
okay,
guess what? Nothing came of it, because the mother, who is also a member of that church, whatever they did, the case was dropped.
right. And that's it. So it might seem, it's easy to say, let's report them and send them to prison. But then the persons who have been impacted by these things, a lot of them are just, they're simply afraid. They're so embarrassed. They're embarrassed by what has taken place. And then
Mm-hmm.
they are afraid of rocking the boat,
Mm-hmm.
being, as you said, and you said it, and I want to repeat it because it's very important. I don't want to be the one to destroy the church. You can't
Mm-hmm.
destroy the church, right? But that's not what they're really thinking. They're thinking that
Mm-hmm.
if they come out, this person is respected by others, and others call them daddy, and everybody else loves them. So I am going to be the one, this lone voice just out here saying this is what's really happening to me, and nobody's going to believe me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So all of
Yes.
those things stop persons from coming out and dealing with them via the law courts.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
Marcia, we know that the church doesn't only need the law court. The church should be dealing with these situations themselves as well.
Yes.
Of course, we
Yes.
have the law courts, and I mean, I'm a student of the law, so I'm not going to say don't deal with it, but I'm going to say that the reality is we belong to the church, and the church has set institutions in place that should also take responsibility and do the right thing according to the word. You
Mm-hmm.
should only be going then to the law courts because you have not dealt with this situation, and you haven't gotten any satisfaction from following these biblical methods or whatever.
Right.
And then, of course, there are persons who, based on what they have done, they do need the courts. But I'm
Yes,
saying
because
also
we have
that
to
the
be careful
church
with that too,
needs
Lynn.
to confront these issues as well.
The church need to confirm, because if they have because the church is part of is in the country,
Yes,
and are subjected to the laws of the land. And if you have broken the
exactly.
laws of the land, you need to go to jail. You need,
Yes,
or you need to be held accountable for it. The
you
church
need
need
to
to
be held
also do,
accountable.
yeah, the church need to also do something about it, and
Yes,
not to do this kind of, you're just moving with the musical
yeah, a
chairs, you
juggling.
know your pastor did something wrong, and so you move him to another church up in, he did it in St. Philip, so now you move him to a church in Christchurch, right?
Right.
And then, oh, you do that, and you wait a couple, and then you send him to because that is what has happened, even in the
Yeah.
last big scandal that occurred, you
Yeah.
know and I'm glad that they had the courage to try to discipline that particular in that particular situation. But we need lots more of that kind of work.
Yes.
The little thing, this article is saying the intentional, let me bring it so I can say it. The intentional usurpers of the pulpit and the congregation for the purposes of their own enjoyment and control, right? These are intentional usurpers of the pulpit, right? These are the ones that we're talking about. This third category of pastors are
Yes.
those who most represent pastoral misconduct, okay? We have to understand that silence is not spiritual.
That's right.
Silence is not spiritual. Silence is not spiritual. We need to understand this. And even, you know what, we're going to be finishing in about 7 minutes. We're
Okay.
closing in 7 minutes. But I want people that, guys, I know people might be out shopping and so on. I want you to share this live, guys. But share, it will be a recording by then. Share it, because I think there's a lot that was said here that someone might be able to listen to what's happening here and be able to break themselves away from this kind of destruction, because it's nothing more than destruction. You're going to a church to try to better yourselves and to spiritually connect with God, and you go there and you become deceived, and your
Yes.
life is destroyed in a lot of these churches. And it's not all the churches, but there are too many of them, too many of them. Yes. Yeah,
That's right.
let's just look at what some of the people are saying, if they had any questions. Any questions, guys, for Lynn as we're closing? Leo is saying that the breaking the chains of the minds that Bob
That's right.
Marley speaks about. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Breaking the chains of the
That's
mind.
right.
Very important. And a lot of them, they're trying to get people um, um, in bondage. Yeah. And this one is saying family, Wayne Hoyt, family units need to prepare their own for that
Yes.
thing we call life and the expectation of navigating it. Very important, right, Lynn? To
Yes, very true.
many times persons are sent out there to figure things out by themselves without family
Correct.
guidance and support. Therefore, the vulnerable will be preyed upon. The
Yes.
church is the place you attend as a family unit. If you're seeking to be religious or spiritually grounded, huh? This is a very good advice there, Mr. Hoyt. Jacqueline Aline is saying authority is not always right. They are just individuals with uniforms. Authority who can fall just like others without uniforms or authority. I often tell people who come to me, I said, listen, the pastor goes to the toilet just like you. They use the toilet, they use the bathroom just like you. Okay, so when if something is happening, you don't like it, you have to open your mouth because they do it too. They go to toilet. There are people, right? But we sometimes put the clergy on this pedestal, right?
Yeah.
Astrogenet Jarrett is saying the Bible does not condone the silence. Correct. Silence is not spirituality.
Yeah.
You're not being spiritual by being silent. Lynn.
You know what I would also say, Marcia, is important. I think Wayne highlighted something that I have become very passionate about, which is personal development,
Mm-hmm.
because unfortunately, all family units are not operating as they are supposed to. That's ideal. It's ideal that the family prepares young persons, but the reality is that there are too many young persons who, as you accurately said, have to go there and learn and fend for themselves in life because it's not taught. And I believe personal development is very important. It's something that should be taught from a very young age because we have to start to prepare persons who can be critical thinkers, persons who can think and are not afraid to
Mm-hmm.
rock the boat. We have for too long, and as an educator, I say this all the time because I believe our educational system perpetuates this. We are creating persons who can just work in factories and just do some. They don't have to think. We can regurgitate, they can reproduce, but they do not know how to critically think. And this is the reason why a lot of persons, and I know for me, I could talk about me at that time, I was not a critical thinker. I was afraid to think and question. As a matter of fact, I remember the pastor even telling me, "You think too much," right? And I learned from that situation that I was not the type of critical thinker that I needed to be. I was afraid to challenge. You come up and you think that everybody has to like you. Everybody does not have to like you, but you have to be strong enough. You have to have the tenacity, and as my favorite word goes, the pertinacity to be able to stand on truth and not be afraid, because truth and what you experience is your reality, not what somebody says, not what somebody thinks it should look like, not what somebody dictates this is how it should go. Be strong enough to stand in what you have experienced and what you know to be true, so you can confront the situations that fail you. We have fallen short of creating people who can do that. We create people who know how to follow, how to stand in the line in the correct way, don't rock the boat too much because somebody gonna get upset. And also because in our society, somebody is gonna give you some backlash. You are going to
Mm-hmm.
ruffle the wrong feathers and you're gonna have the
Mm-hmm.
wrong person being your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
create a set of people who are fearful. They're fearful people. And that
Mm-hmm.
is what needs to change. So when they become victims, even more fear is created, and then they're not able to get out of it.
Yes, 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 yes. This is powerful, Lynn. And I love your approach in dealing with this. And as we said, this is not here trying to, we're not, nobody's here trying to bash the church. We are speaking about what is happening within the church.
Yes.
and that needs to stop. However, if you are part of a church and this is what is happening within that church, it's very important that you report it. Find a way to speak up about it. And don't worry about that church crumbling. If after you've reported it, it's crumbled, it means that it needed to crumble a long time ago. You know,
That's right.
don't be afraid of crumbling that particular church. If that particular church crumbles, it doesn't mean that the church of God has crumbled. It means that that place that is full of sin is crumbling, or
That's
that
right.
it's coming down so it can be built up. Don't be worried about that. Don't be worried about that. It's very important because you know this is what is perpetuating the problem. You know, we are, and we heard it from Lynn. You know, this entire discussion, we've been hearing that, where it is a case where we are, everybody, we're afraid of this, afraid of that. We're afraid of being ostracized. We're afraid of mashing up the church. We're afraid of this. What is this? A whole lot of fear. Too much fear.
Yes.
Some of these churches need to crumble. Listen, I said it on here. Some of them need to crumble. They need to come down because they're nothing
Yeah.
more than, synagogues of deception, synagogues of manipulation, synagogues of all evil that goes on, of abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. Some of them need to crumble. And if you know something, report it, talk about it. Silence is not spirituality.
That's right.
This These predators in the clergy need to be stopped. And you that's watching this, you have the power to do it. You have the power. You can do it. Especially you know something, talk about it. Okay? And those of you parents, report it. Go to the police. Okay, go to the police, report it. Guys, this has been a very informative show. Another one of these, and we're going to do another one on Saturday. In our Saturday edition, we're going to continue talking about this, guys. And so I'm going to ask you to share the live, also to support our sister here with her book, and she talks about the tale of two kingdoms, and she goes in more in-depth discussion about this situation that occurred in this particular church in Barbados. Miss Lynn Morgan, Ambassador Lynn Morgan, let me say thank you so very much for being on today, and for being, I mean, so enlightening, really. And really very well presented program today, Lynn. Thank you so much, and
Thank
we
you.
support you in what you're doing. God bless you to
Thank you.
everybody. Eunice White, thank you, Beverly, Lorraine, everybody who's on, thank you, Camille, Mr. Hoyt, everybody, Leo Wright, hey Leo, everybody that's on, Astra, please share this live. When we come on, share it, please. Very important. God bless you all. Have a lovely Saturday, and I see you on Wednesday at 1